The following is brought to you by VerticalVet. Rethink your GPO.
Hello and welcome once again to another VerticalVet Business Academy. I am Dr. Ernie Ward, Executive Director of Education, and today we're going to talk about change. And this is a great time of year to sort of reconsider, reassess, reanalyze, and plan and prepare for 2022. And so this week, we are really happy to bring to you one of our very own VerticalVet VetIQ, a new member, Dr. Dave McDonald, and he is coming to us all the way from the West Coast in Oregon, and he's going to talk to us about some of the things that he's going to be helping us with in 2022 and beyond, but more importantly on how we as veterinary professionals can prepare for change. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Dave.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. And listen, before we get started, we're really excited to be telling people about our new program, VetIQ. It's a practice owner special little peer-to-peer study groups. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing to help us at VerticalVet.
So yeah, this is really excited about bringing out this peer-to-peer group, and what we're going to be doing is with the owner veterinarians, we're going to focus on things that are working. No one person has all the answer, but I think when we get groups of 15, 20 veterinarians together, we can share what's working and what works for you might not. You can share that with me, and I can share what's working with you. And I think it becomes a win-win that we can, the group think really kind of crowdsourcing what's working and successful strategies and what's going on in the veterinary world. So super excited. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to try and get together, have either this spring or summer, have an in-person meeting to get everybody together as well. But we'll be getting together once a month online and talking about working through different issues that we all face as owners.
That's right. And again, we've been doing just amazing things with our platinum groups for practice managers. We've had tremendous success and interest in that. And so we do have a waiting list right now. And so if you're not on a current platinum group, then we're getting to you just as quickly as we can grow. But this is a new way to expand sort of our offerings. And this is a practice owner. It's a non-competitive environment. So, again, we're able to share openly what's working and what maybe, our challenges are in our clinics. So we're super excited. Dave's going to be joining us at VerticalVet. Of course, I'll still be contributing a lot of content to both the practice managers and now to the VetIQ. But today, Dave, we really want to talk about something that impacts all of us. And I wanted to get this discussion started at the beginning of the year because for me, January is always a time of reflection and preparation. And so let's talk a little bit about change today. And I know one of the first things we're going to talk about is, Dave, it's inevitable. I mean, we've really seen the past couple of years a lot of changes thrust upon us. But let's talk about what does that mean when we say change is inevitable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe a little bit more obvious given the last couple of years, right? But I think that it's amazing as the world keeps moving and technology and the rate of technology and expectations of people, and so. I don't think there's any magic formula for anything in this world, but, it seems pretty clear that if we're not always looking to see what can we be doing better, what can we be doing different, then the world's going to leave us behind pretty quickly. And so, as you said, I think this is a great time of year. Naturally, we're all looking, New Year's, what can we be doing differently personally, professionally? And so, this is certainly the time of year that's real obvious, but I think that there's always the world's just such a rapidly changing place, and it's fascinating to look at how quickly and it's sort of a exponential growth of how things are changing in the world. So it's just trying to stay abreast of things. The world's moving rapidly.
And Dave, in our preparation for this discussion today, one of the things that, you did remind me is that too often the veterinary profession feels like we're insulated from change, like somehow we are different than everything else around us. And, oh yeah, they got this internet telemedicine stuff, but that's not vet medicine. Oh yeah, people are buying stuff online, but not vet medicine. But Dave, that's just not true at all, especially these days.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's fascinating to me. And, over the years going to meetings and people are like, but we're different. The veterinary industry is different. And what we found is we're not different, right? You're right. I mean, people can go to the internet, and we need to be aware of that. And all of a sudden now telemedicine's come to us. But I think that's the big risk that we run into as a profession, is we just think that, well, we're a unique business, right? And nobody has the challenges we have. And without a doubt, we've got very unique challenges. But at the end of the day, customers are customers, and business challenges are very similar across the board. And so we're not really as unique, I think, sometimes as we like to think of ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah, and Dave, you brought up, of course, the impacts of the pandemic, and I think, once again, just to remind the Vertical Vet family, I mean, this was a global phenomenon. I mean, it impacted all facets of life, and so whether it's pets, whether it's business, whether it's home life, school, you name it, I mean, nothing was untouched by the pandemic, and so I think that what we're starting to see as we emerge on the other side of this time is that, wow, there have been significant shifts in our society. People are having different expectations. People's lifestyles have been disrupted, and some for the good and some not for the good. But, I think that for me, when I'm looking at this moving forward in 2022 and beyond, I mean, Dave, where do you see some of the big impacts that COVID may have had specifically on our profession?
Well, I think there's a couple of big things. I mean, we can look across the country, and I think everybody's sort of reevaluating as far as what do they want to do? What do they need out of their job? And so from an employee standpoint, their expectations might be a little different going forward, right? And time off, time with family, or personal things that people want to do and achieve are probably going to have a lot more importance than maybe they did 3-4 years ago. And so we have to realize that, and do our best to help meet our employees' goals, to make them successful. And then, our clients, the same thing. I mean, their expectations are different. Their reality is different. So we have to understand that they're living in a different world, and they might need different things from us, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, and that's one of the other points we want to talk about today with our viewers, is the fact that it does change our staff, it does change our clients, it does change even our practice of medicine. And so, like right now we're talking about, first of all, this reshuffling of priorities in the workplace. And so we're seeing, people are calling it the Great Resignation. I actually think what's going to happen is it's just going to lead to higher wages. And so, that's a direct impact, and we can lament all we want, Dave. We can say, oh, this is bad or this is good. In my opinion, I do believe this is good, to pay higher wages to again, I think we need this for our entire economy.
Absolutely,
but getting back to that, it's going to change the way we even look at benchmarks in our practice, right? And clients on the other side of this also have to realize that veterinary services are going to cost more. So maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that I agree with you. I think it's going to be a good thing that we're going to have to pay our staff more, which they've been deserving for forever, right? And then, well, that money has to come from our clients. And so, and I don't think our clients are going to have a real issue with it, as long as we're able to provide the services that they need and provide value for those services. But we have to recognize that our employees need something, and then we have to recognize, how do we meet that need, and to get that from our clients, then we have to figure out what do our clients want from us. And if we can meet our clients' expectations and continue to exceed our expectations, which I think as a profession we've done, extremely well over the years, then that's all going to work its way out. But we have to, as opposed to sitting and, as you said, lamenting and saying, well, woe is me, I can't afford to pay this. Well, we have to find a way, right? And so that's where we get into how are we going to approach this? How are we going to make this work? But we have to find a way.
Right. And honestly, Dave, that's what VetIQ is all about. I mean, we're actually going to be diving down deep every month with our study groups of owners and explaining to you how you can make this work. And look, if these are issues that you do find interesting, I mean, definitely make sure to contact us, because I mean, we want you as part of our groups. We really want people that are eager and enthusiastic and willing to do the hard work to get on the other side of this. I mean, Dave, you and I and others, we've been singing this song for 30 years. I mean, it's what made us a success in the 90s, to be quite honest with you. But we know that these these toxic workplaces are not sustainable anymore. People are leaving in droves. I mean, every week for the past 2 years on our weekly podcast, the Veterinary Viewfinder, we talk about this, and it's just, it's shocking that people are holding on to these old ways of doing business. But again, we're going to help lead you forward. So if you're a younger practice owner or maybe an older practice owner looking for an exit, we're going to help you sort of get your ship in shape to sail off into that sunset, so to speak. But Dave, let's also talk about the impact that the pandemic has had on clients. Now, we've talked a little bit about internet purchases and telemedicine, but I think it actually goes deeper than that. I mean, the human-animal bond has been impacted. I mean, we've seen a new generation of pet parents. I mean, maybe talk a little bit about some of the changes that are inevitable for 2022 when it comes to our clients.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, well, the work from home thing, that's not going to go away. I mean, there's going to be some people going back to the office, but I think how our clients work is changing, and as a part of that, they're as we saw, is that the client's home all day, so they're seeing what's going on with their beloved pets more during the day, and they're more aware of things, and they want those things addressed and need answers. And so that's not going to change. I mean, there's still going to be, I think, a lot of that. And then they're becoming more familiar with technology through work and with their own personal physicians. And so that type of stuff is going to, they're going to have those expectations for us. So we need to be able to be ready to continue to provide services via telemedicine and working over the internet, things like that. So that's all is going to stay, and their needs. The world's not going to go back to where it was 3 years ago, right? There are some things that are going to stay with us in this post-COVID world, if you will.
Yeah, the good things stick. I mean, that's really how evolution works, progress works. The good things tend to stick around a little longer than the bad things because they kind of burn out. But also subscription-based services. I mean, people are expecting delivery at home for nearly everything. They're expecting in-home services for many things, including pet care. Right. So, I mean, these are all things that, again, at Vertical Vet, we have strategic partners. This is what we do, right? We try to assemble those pieces to help you as an independent veterinary clinic compete with corporate entities who have these resources at their beck and call. But these are the kind of changes, I think, Dave, that veterinarians have got to adapt to, evolve with, and offer if they're going to succeed in 2022 and beyond. I mean, if you are not automatically refilling medications and shipping them to their home, Dave, that's a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think those are things that's the expectation, right? Is I mean, look at Amazon and what they've been able to do. And so we have to figure out how we're going to provide those services. And I think that's the neat thing that with this VIQ program we're rolling out is the ability to say, you can talk about, hey, this is what's been working for me. And I'll go, oh my gosh, I never thought of that, but this is what's working for me. And then you look and say, oh, that's a great idea again. So, that's where we get into this group think, or, almost a crowdsourcing type of thing of 15, 20 veterinarians and sharing best practices. And I think between all that, we can figure out what are the things that our clients need, because at the end of the day, your clients on the East Coast and my clients on the West Coast, they're all looking for the same thing, right? And so I think that's really the neat thing of a program like this is we can make it a win-win for everybody, and at the end of the day, a win for our clients. Right.
And for our patients. And David, that leads me to the last thing about, just the changes in medicine. So when I think back, I am credited, I guess, with having the first CO2 surgical laser in North Carolina. And so that was back in the 90s. And the way we got the message out was through newsletters. Now, for you younger whippersnappers out there, we would actually mail things to people. They would open them out of their mailbox and read them. And so we couldn't amplify that message, right? So we reached our area, but that was about it. But today, if you bring on a new technology in veterinary medicine, it's on social media. And suddenly now, if it's happening in Oregon, then it's going to impact my practice in North Carolina, because my clients are going to see it when they're scrolling Instagram or watching TikTok, and they're going to say, hey, Dr. Ward, why aren't you doing what Dr. Dave's doing out there? I want the new super laser gizmo whizmo, right? And I think that we've got to really pay attention to these emerging trends, because, your clients are demanding it. And Dave, I think we're also leaving this era when your clients would maybe ring you up and say, hey, Dr. Ward, have you heard about this new thing? They just leave you now, right? I mean, they go and they
Right.
find it. So maybe speak to the impact that some of these changes, particularly around technology, are having on access to veterinary medical care, as well as the demand for advanced diagnostics, therapeutics, and so forth.
Well, I think you're right. Is people get online and we've all seen the client come in and on the one hand we want to roll our eyes because they bring in this piece of paper, right, that says, hey, what about this? But at the end of the day, that's the world we live in, and so we can bemoan it. But if we don't meet that need, then yeah, they're going to go down the street, and information is just moving so rapidly across the country, and the rate of change is just phenomenal. And it used to be the knowledge base was slowly advancing, and now if you wake up in the morning and all of a sudden there's another new technology and new ideas. And so but the expectation is from our clients is that we stay current on these things, and we have to always be looking to what's working, what's not working, and what we have to be aware of the world we live in, and we can't just sit in our little corner and say, well, I'm just going to keep doing what worked for me in 1995, because that's not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. And and the other thing too, Dave, this we're trying to create a culture here. And so that leads us to our next thing I want to discuss with you. And that is, creating a culture of change or curiosity within a clinic. And, when I think back to when we started Vertical Vet, 4 years ago now, that's what we were trying to do. At least that was my part of this deal. I said, look, I want to make sure that we create systems that allow veterinary clinics to continually evolve and grow. And that culture of change is really important. So maybe talk a little bit about how a clinic today who is kind of, okay, I know I need to do some things differently, but I don't know how to get my staff on board or my team to engage. What are some of the tips that you might share with them for creating this culture of change or curiosity?
Well, I think it's working with your staff. I mean, the first mistake I think we can run into is feeling like, well, I have to come up with all the answers, and I have to, I mean, undoubtedly, as the owner veterinarian, we're going to be the driver of that change. But, we're talking about how, well, we'll get this group of 20 veterinarians together. We have all these great ideas in the room. But, I would argue that, hey, look around in your hospital, look at your staff, look at your CSRs, and what are they experiencing, and listen to them and say, hey, what's working for you? What's not working for you? I mean, some of the greatest ideas that we had when I owned my practice, they weren't my ideas. They weren't novel ideas that I thought of, to be honest with you, but they came from my staff, because they're in the trenches and they know their job and they know what's working and it's not working. So I think the first thing is just to listen to your staff and encourage your staff to say, hey, what are your pinch points? What are your challenges? And what do you think? And are there better ways of doing that? And then work with them as far as how do we make those changes? We have to be driving those changes, but we have, our team members are incredibly talented, and we have to, I think if we tap into that resource of our staff, would be amazed at how many good ideas they have for us.
Yeah, and Dave, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think what we're really getting at, the essence of this cultural change and culture for change that embraces change, that encourages change, is the one of willingness and openness, right? So you're willing to hear other people's ideas. You don't just dictate to them what they will do, but you say, hey, I want my receptionist, what do you guys, what are your struggles and how can you solve them? Because like Dave said, they've already got an idea of how they can make it better. Same thing with your veterinary technicians, your associates, so forth. So first of all, you've got to have that willingness to listen. The second thing, that I think is really, really important is to understand that people do have control. And I think that when I look at what is happening in veterinary practices across the country, most of the frustration is there because people feel they have no autonomy, no control, no sense of I can, influence the direction of my career path. They feel helpless and frustrated. So talk to us a little bit about, and I know this is what we're going to be doing with these study groups, this VetIQ program for practice owners. But Dave, what are some of the quick little tips maybe that you would offer for that owner, that manager who's watching today and they're going, okay, that sounds good, but how do I actually do it? How do I make people realize that I want to hear their ideas?
Well, it's communication, right? And the first thing is just to ask them, and positive reinforcement. It's saying, hey, and then taking those ideas and running them. And I think that, it's telling people and reinforcing the behaviors we want. And as you said, it's a win-win, because they're going to help our practice succeed. But by doing that, they're enjoying their job, they're getting fulfillment for their job. And so we go back to, the employee crisis in the world, if you will. And so that's the thing that our employees want, right? Is they want to feel like they're contributing. I mean, yes, they want and need more money, but at the end of the day, job satisfaction is not just about that paycheck. It's about, I would really feel like I'm making a difference. And so that's one way that we can empower employees to make a difference. And so I think it's just trying to communicate, be open to ideas, and basic positive reinforcement of saying, hey, that's a great idea. And ask them, if they say, well, this is, we've got this crunch time at 4:30, what do we want to do? And you say, okay, well, tell me your ideas, and what do you think is going to work, and give it a go, right?
Give it a go. That is the secret right there. Try it. Because too often as a business owner, as a manager, we sit back and go, you know what, I'm going to dismiss that idea. It doesn't sound like it will work. And we never give it a chance. And honestly, many times, even in failure, and again, we're not talking about things that would put you out of business. We're talking about, they try to adjust the schedule at 4:30, as Dave's saying. But even if it doesn't work out, number one, you've shown a willingness to listen, and you've said you have some control here. And what'll happen, Dave, in my experience, is they iterate. They improve the idea. They go, oh, you know what? I see why that didn't work, and they fix it. So you gotta, that is what this cultural change is all about, right? I mean, it's not just about coming up with the best idea. It's about encouraging your staff to come up with better ideas.
Right. And I think, like you said, I mean, failure, we're not talking about, huge things, but, failure of how we're going to address the go home time and the chaos at 4:30 in the afternoon, an hour before closing. So you try this plan and it doesn't work. Well, that's not really a failure, because then you can look and say, well, why didn't it work? And so you can build on that, right? And so you can't be afraid of, I think that the thing we run into is this, to stand back and your CSR comes in with this, they think this is a great idea, and we're like, oh, that'll never work, right? That'll never work. Well, now we've shot them down. And so, that's going against everything we just talked about as far as trying to really reinforce them and give them job satisfaction. But then we also missed the opportunity of seeing, well, would it work? But even if it didn't work, what lessons were there to be learned that it didn't work? And so that the next iteration of how we want to approach this is even better, right? And so even though it might be a quote unquote failure, you're still building towards better things.
And the beautiful thing, the word that I like most here is curiosity, because, Dave, what we're trying to encourage people to do is to explore, to be imaginative, right? So to use their creativity to solve these problems. And curiosity is the foundation of all of that. So we want to give people the power to have impact on their workplace. And then they start to go, I wonder if I can make that better, right? And then they start to bring you these ideas. But again, don't be too quick to dismiss. Don't be too quick to judge. Sometimes just let the process play out. I used to have this thing I would say in my lectures to vets over the years. I would say, look, my whole idea is to provide a soft landing for your failures, right? I mean, so I'm going to allow you to make some mistakes. I'm not going to just knowingly, like say, willfully make a mistake. But if you do fail, it's like the 4:30 rescheduling, changing priorities or whatever, it's simple stuff. And if it doesn't work out, it's a soft landing, and that encourages you to get back up and try it again. Dave, one other thing too, just while we're here, before we move on to the next point, I think for me, the hardest part of this is to be self-aware. I think too many business owners, too many managers will never take a step back and go, you know what? I could do better, right? I have a shortcoming here. This self-awareness, it took me, many years early in my career as a practice owner to actually be able to take a step back and say, nope, you're not such a hot shot,
Right.
And that's a humbling way to look at life. But what I found was once I got to that point where I could let go of the ego and understand that I was a human being and had misgivings and failures like everybody else, I started to really, really progress. So, I mean, any words on how people could take this time of year to self-reflect and maybe become a little more self-aware so they can evolve?
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's the key is that to humble is really the key to me. And what don't think that you have to have all the answers, and don't have all the answers. But there's people around you that recognize the smart people you're surrounded with, your CSRs and your technicians, and all those strong people that help you. And I think that you're right. And the other thing that I always think about is, we don't have to have the answers. We don't have to have the answers in veterinary medicine, So if this culture of curiosity goes outside, and so what's working for other industries? I mean, going back to where we started, right? We're not that unique. And so I think it's being aware of what's working for other industries. And if you see something that's working at the auto shop down the street, right? Well, maybe there's something we can take from that. And so it's just about opening yourself up to new ideas, alternative ideas, and don't be so caught up in yourself thinking that, well, I'm going to have all the answers here, and recognize that we're all stronger because we utilize the people and around us.
And Dave, finally, one of the things when we were prepping for this conversation that really struck a chord with me was, you reminded me once again, and I want to remind the Vertical Vet family, that these changes don't have to be massive. They don't have to be huge overtaking. This doesn't have to be something that completely changes everything you do in your practice. These are often little small steps you take that add up to a very big, successful journey. So maybe talk a little bit about the importance of small change that at the end of the year or the end of a decade or whatever add up to real significant change.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think we tend to look at change and we're thinking, these big global changes and adding veterinarians and adding evening hours. But no, it's all the little things. And whether it be how we check in clients, or the best way to be sure that we keep track of who's in the hospital, but all those little things. And so again, that's where we get into, well, failure on these little things aren't really a big deal, but there's a lot to learn. And then it becomes a 1 + 1 + 1. And I think you get a synergy as well. So it really becomes 1 + 1 = 4 now, instead of just 2. And that all these little ideas add up to be big things. And we're not trying to make this change and change everything yesterday or in the next 30 days. These are things that we're going to just address, month by month. And so at the end of the year, at the end of 5 years, it's like, well, wow, look where this practice has gone from here.
Yeah, it's so true. And, and I think that sometimes we separate, like we get in certain contexts, like you have to take baby steps. Like, for example, in my years of Ironman, being a competitive Ironman athlete and coaching, triathletes and runners, you would see these people, they would come to you and they'd say, hey, Ernie, I want to run an Ironman. I want to do an Ironman. And you're like, okay, so what's your history? And they'd be like, well, I did a 5K or a 10K or a half marathon. And so, I'm saying, well, that's a 3-year journey, right? And of course there would be like, no way. I want to do it like in 6 months. And I may be able to get you to that finish line of an Ironman, but you're going to probably get injured and you're going to get burnt out. You're not going to sustain it, right? You're not going to be an old guy like me still doing this silly stuff. But, what I try to tell people is that just like you wouldn't try to run a marathon, with having not run a 5K. And really, a marathon is 9 5Ks consecutively. So let's start out by doing a 5K, and then let's do a bunch of them, and let's get a 10K, and let's do a half, and let's do a full. It's a sequence. And I think that, Dave, it really does frustrate me because I see so many veterinarians that never get to the end of the finish line of the marathon or the Ironman or whatever because they never start the 5K. Because they only see, oh my gosh, this is so much work. I could never imagine doing that. So they just stop. And I think that if you would take this time of year and sit back, just like Dave said, and said, look, what are a couple of things we could do to improve efficiencies? What I found, Dave, is that when you start to get those little wins, right? When you do finish that first 5K, you are so empowered and just full of enthusiasm that you're like, okay, now I want to try a 10K. So talk about the value of little wins, as opposed to trying to get this massive win.
No, and I think, to get the massive wins, you have to be doing all the little things right. And so, the analogy for me is I coached hockey for many, many years. And so, well, if we want to have a winning team, how do you do that? Well, it's a bunch of little things, right? And so you have to get the basic skills down. And so you got to be doing the little things right. And then those little things allow you to do more. So it's the same analogy as you were talking about in the 5Ks and marathons. But I think that that's the key is, looking at the little things, whether it be our check-in process or our client experience or the checkout process, or, how can we be more efficient getting lab work done and getting back to our owners. But if you have to do all those little things. And so, it's easy to say, well, okay, my goal for 2022 is I want my practice to grow 10% this year. How am I going to get there? Well, that's not going to be one thing, right? It's going to be 10 little things you have to do right to make sure your client's happy and you're able to see enough people to do that. So there's all these little steps and, as you said, the baby steps that we have to do along the way. So I think when we're looking at change, again, it's really easy to say, hey, I want to do this big thing. I want to, add veterinarians and I want to grow 10% or whatever in the coming year. But we need to look at from a change level and say, well, what are the little things that are going to allow us to grow to get to that, so we can get that big goal that we're looking for. And so you got to do all those little things right, and that's where all these little changes can grow into be allow us to make the big changes we want, right?
Yeah, and those fundamentals, those basic fundamentals of a successful veterinary practice, that's what we've been doing with the platinum groups, the practice managers for the past couple of years. We're now expanding this to owners. I mean, we're going to make sure that we give you and fortify you with the fundamentals and then do feedback so you get to talk to other colleagues who are trying to have the same struggles and so forth so that we can all succeed and get to that finish line. And again, David, sometimes it does, I get a little frustrated with my colleagues because they understand the context of, well, of course I couldn't go do a marathon until I learned how to do a few 5Ks, right? They get that, but yet they'll show up at practice and go, all right, in 3 months we're adding a vet. It's like, wait, I don't even know if you need to add a vet. You probably just need to improve efficiencies. Your systems may be off. So I don't know.
Sure.
We're going to be talking about, guys, if you're interested, definitely reach out to us. We will tell you how to get it hooked up with the VetIQ or the Platinum Group. But Dave, kind of as we finish up, I think that this time of year is the time to set your goals. I mean, if anybody has listened to me or followed me for the past, 25, 30 years, I've always talked about the importance of goal setting. My wife and I, this is just part of who we are, and it made us who we are today. It got us to where we are. And so let's talk a little bit about SMART goals. What are some of the KPIs that you're looking at as we start a new year? What's the bit of advice that you would give that vet who maybe hasn't done a lot of goal planning before and they're saying, okay, I want to try this. And please do try it because it will positively impact your life. I guarantee it. But talk about some of the SMART goals and how you set goals and KPIs and so forth.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it's, so when we start talking about change, then the question is, well, how do we decide if change is working? And so we have to be able to measure that. And so, when we decide, okay, this is what I want to do, to look at things like SMART goals, where we're trying to define what we want, how by when do we want it, how are we going to measure it? And so, things that I like to look at, it may be something simple as far as, the old, how many clients are we getting in, or what's the average wait time? You can get into certainly from a financial standpoint, keeping track of your different expenses. What are your COGS looking like? What are your employee expenses looking like? So, depending on what you want, but we need to define what it is we're trying to do. And then we come back and measure and say, are we getting there, right? And so for me, I always like to track, doctor production and how many clients are they seeing? And then, there's a whole different myriad of ways we can measure client satisfaction and trying to make sure that we're meeting our goals with our clients and getting feedback from our clients, right? You can talk to your CSRs about what are wait times, and whether we used to always document when they come in the door and when they walk out the door, and you can look at that and measure and say, okay, we're being efficient here, or no, this is going the wrong direction, so we need to bob and weave accordingly. So it depends on what metric you're trying to adjust, but I think it's important that again, we don't just say, well, I want to be more successful next year. Well, I mean, we all want to be more successful next year, but we have to define what does that look like, right? And then from there, we can decide what are the best ways to get there, and are we achieving that goal? And if we're not, then we, make that adjustment, right?
Yeah, and Dave, I love that. Again, what's for me, it always starts with, why is this important to me? Like, why am I setting this goal? Like, for example, you mentioned wait times. Why is that important? Why is that something that should have impact? Is it to improve efficiencies, to increase the number of patients that we can see per day, to decrease the stress on our staff? I mean, you need to have that why. For me, that's what guided it, and I will tell you this, if you can really start to understand and examine your whys, Dave, this is how you get to 20-year goals, right? This is how you actually, hopefully you get to be an older guy like me, in your mid 50s, and you realize, wow, the things I did in my 30s got me here today. And I really encourage that. So if you're in your 30s today, I'm telling you that the habits, the actions that you take right now will impact you for decades to come. I mean, that's just a fact of life. So again, examine that why. What KPIs then can support that why, and then what goals can you create, whether it's smart goals or even just simple things like, we want to increase the number of Google reviews that we have, right? I mean, very simple, basic things, but understanding how that impacts, and more importantly, why would that impact your clinic? So I don't know, Dave, if you have anything to add to that. I mean, these are esoteric at times, but they really have significant meaning over time.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part of setting the goals, is the why, and then you get into the who, right? So who's going to do what, who's going to be responsible for what, and then, if you decide that, okay, let's go back to wait times, right? So we need to address our wait times. So the who, well, it's is the CSR's job to be sure that our wait times are getting better. But if they're the who that it's going to affect, then we need to talk to them, right? So we need to, the people who are involved in that and are going to be affected by that, we need to talk to and involve them in the goal setting and the solution setting, and figuring out what changes do we need to do. So, and then as we progress in this and we try to measure and say, okay, our white times are getting better or they're not, then we give that feedback to them. And it's this conversation, right? Back and forth, trying to bob and weave and refine the goal. So a lot of times we may set a goal at the onset of something, and then at the end of 6 months of working on this goal, the target has changed a little bit because we've realized that it may be a rabbit hole, that it's leading down to other issues, but there might be other issues underlying that. But it's a process. It's not just this is exactly what we're going to do. Is we have to communicate along the way. We have to adjust and involve all the players.
Right. And it is a process, Dave. And I will tell you right now, whatever goals you set, no matter why you set them or who has to implement them, you've got to constantly reassess and reevaluate. What I hate, it's sort of like, Dave, I do a lot with pet obesity over the past 20 years. And what would drive me nuts was I would see these referrals from other vet clinics, self-referrals, or other vets that would bring me, this pet with obesity, just, a 30-pound cat type of stuff. And they would have been on the same therapeutic weight loss diet for a year, and yet the cat gained another pound, right? So nobody was reassessing, nobody was reevaluating, nobody was adjusting, as you mentioned, right? Because obviously a lot of things should have changed over that year with that cat. But yet it's the same thing with our business practices, right? I mean, if you wait an entire year and then your accountant says, well, here's your P&L. Well, some things you did okay on, but some things you didn't do so good on. No value there, right? Your goal, nothing moved the needle. You can't be always in a state of reactiveness when it comes to this data. So sit back. I would encourage you to, at least on a monthly, if not a quarterly basis, to reevaluate these goals and say, wait, what's working, what's not? How can I make it better? How do I need to adjust? And I will tell you, if you will constantly stay attentive to your goals, and I keep my top goals. So I've got my list of 6 that I carry in my wallet. They're on I have a notes program on my computer and phone, and they're always there to remind me. So when you keep them in top of mind, you're attentive to them, you're always checking in, right? And so I think that's another important aspect, is just have them in front of mind. Dave, years ago, I was listening to an interview with Mick Jagger. Okay, Rolling Stones, super successful entertainer, rock star. I mean, I think a lot of us know who he is. But what was shocking, they were talking about his he was talking about his life, and they had a new album out at the time or whatever, and doing a tour, that kind of thing. But what struck me, this little bitty tangent, he said, to this day, he goes, I started doing this as a young man in the Rolling Stones. I realized if I wanted to have a sustained career, I wanted to be, doing this well into my 70s, which he has, and he is. He says, I need to make sure that I stay focused on whatever I'm trying to achieve. And he says, I still sit at my hotel rooms and I bring out my list of to-dos, and every night I check them off and I rewrite it for the next day. And I was like, holy smokes, Dave.
Wow.
This guy's doing what a lot of us are doing, right? And here he was. You think it's all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This guy is focused, and he is the Rolling Stones are $1 billion enterprise because of those simple actions, right? He stayed focused, attentive, and of course, Keith Richards is probably not taking notes and keeping a list. But that's what makes the Rolling Stones. But again, the oddest times you hear these things. So Dave, I don't know. I mean, are you a practitioner of goal setting and all that?
Yeah, no, I think, I try to have your core values, your core goals, and then every decision we make is reflected in those, right? So, you can argue, is that your bias? But I think what you decide to do is this going to work towards my goals? Is this going to get me where I want to be? And so I think that, there's, I don't have them in my wallet, but I certainly have them up here, that I'm always thinking and trying to decide, okay, does this fit with where I want to go and what I want to do? And all those decisions are evaluated in that light.
Yeah, I used to always say in my lectures, Dave, you might have even heard me say this: life isn't something that happens to you; it's something that you do. It's that simple. And I think too often we just sit back passively and expect change to happen to us, and it will, but it's probably not the change you want. So, I really appreciate this conversation with you today, Dave, because
this is great. Again, I appreciate it.
You just can't overemphasize the importance of being proactive when it comes to change, and being forward thinking and having the goals up here and being attentive to them, because, Dave, otherwise these changes happen and you have no control. And then guess what? The whole profession goes, hey, I hate the way that worked out. It's like, we didn't do anything.
Right.
Dave, again, I'm super excited to have you join the Vertical Vet team. I mean, VetIQ is something, we've had different little versions of it, but as our platinum groups grew in expanse and success, we realized, we really needed to bring on someone like you to help corral, practice owners. So I'm really excited about what you're bringing to us.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be really a lot of fun and really eye-opening. And I think it's just going to be a win-win for everybody. I think I'm really looking forward to it. I think we have just incredibly smart, wonderful people in our profession. And so the chance to kind of group think with these people, and, like you said, change is coming, right? So we can either drive the train or we can get run over by that train. And I think that, it's just super exciting to be able to work with, I just have the utmost respect for so many people in our profession. And so the chance to work with, a couple of groups of veterinarians like this is going to be a blast.
Oh yeah, we're super excited. Well, thanks again, Dave, for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Well, listen, guys, that is it. Great discussion, and hopefully just a few little nudges and reminders to get you started off in 2022 on the right foot, because that's what Vertical Vet is here for. We are here to help you elevate your practice. We want you to rethink what a GPO brings to you, because we know that we're more than just a purchasing group. We're actually a resource community, and so that's why we bring on people like Dr. Dave McDonald and others to help us grow these small communities, because we feel like sometimes it's good to have a little tribe. And so the VetIQ groups are just going to be, non-competitive owners that we sit down, talk about real things, make plans, address change, and hopefully help you elevate your practice. So on behalf of our entire team here at Vertical Vet, again, we want to thank you for checking this out tonight. If you want to find out more about VetIQ, which is our practice owners groups, let us know, or the platinum groups, which I know we have a waiting list, but definitely get on it now, because we are working to expand them rapidly as we move into 2022. So again, on behalf of all of us here at Vertical Vet, I am Dr. Ernie Ward. Thank you so much. We will talk to you soon. Bye.